Film treatment. Legend of the future. 1. Early morning. A 10-year-old girl is sleeping in bed. She smiles as she dreams, seeing her mother in astronaut's gear on a distant, unfamiliar planet. Mum, Erica, I miss you so much. Mummy, come home. I'll come back as soon as I find my way back. Mummy, it's unbearably hot in New York. Don't be afraid, God will protect the earth from the heat of the sun. A tornado whirlwind grabs her mother and carries her somewhere far away. Erica, Mom, where are you? But the girl realizes her mother has just dreamt of her. At that moment, the sun's rays, reflected in the glass of the skyscrapers, flash into Erica's eyes. The girl crouches by the window, gazing anxiously into the distance. The sun's disk rises from behind the Atlantic horizon line. Manhattan is surrounded by a clumsy concrete barrier, about 30 meters high, which is crashing against the powerful waves. It is clear that the ocean level has risen dramatically. If it were not for this barrier, New York would be inundated. The streets are deserted, uninhabitable, crowded, with no car traffic. Erica opens the door to her dad's bedroom. Are you awake? Dad, I dreamt of Mummy again. The official NASA conclusion that there is no hope that the crew of the Unicum spacecraft, which disappeared a year ago, is still alive, is on Gerald's mind. To his daughter, but when Mummy comes back, we won't let her go anywhere. Nowhere else. Daddy, why is the sun so cruel to humans? Daughter, you must understand that this is a time of severe testing for our planet. Gerald enters an empty room at the end of the corridor. A photograph of a boy is on the table. Gerald puts a card next to it. Dear Arnold, happy 18th birthday. Gerald goes to his office and switches on the video camera, pointing its lens at himself. On the screen, Gerald sees himself asleep, tangled up, wearing his night pajamas. Enigmatically, straight from the screen, why is the sun so merciless? What is it punishing human civilization for? Gerald repeats these words several times, changing his intonation each time. 2. The TV studio hosts a program called Cataclysm Chronicles. This morning, my 10-year-old daughter asked me, Daddy, why is the sun scorching our earth without mercy? I was lost, not knowing what to say. That is why I have no clear answer to this rhetorical question. I must confess that I feel helpless before the grim reality of the cataclysm. People have lost hope of being saved on the planet's fatal journey towards destruction. It paralyzes my tongue to have to make increasingly gloomy predictions. Who would have thought a decade ago that New York would find itself in the climate zone of the Sahara Desert, where the air heats up to 50 degrees Celsius during the day and rainfall is only a few centimeters a year? Today's chronicles are filled with ever more tragic and horrifying facts. However, even if my tongue is stiff, I must shine a light on the reality of the situation, no matter how harsh that truth may be, no matter how desperate it may be. So let's take a look at what the Blue Planet is today. Gerald starts the story. Documentary footage is shown on TV screens. So, for some unexplained reason, thermonuclear reactions in the sun's core intensified about a decade ago, raising the temperature in the outer part of the sun by about 1,000 degrees Celsius. The solar activity changed the composition of the globe's atmosphere and increased the planet's average temperature by 15 degrees, leading to catastrophic climate change. The good news is that temperatures are slowly stabilizing. First, with the melting of glaciers at the North and South Poles, global ocean levels have already risen by more than 5 meters and are still rising. Vast areas of land have been flooded, archipelagos have disappeared, continents have been reshaped, estuaries have been enlarged, bays and straits have been enlarged, and peninsulas are becoming islands. Tides turn into tsunamis that destroy coastlines and all commercial ports drown in the water. Tropical resorts are doomed to absolute oblivion. Second, the planet's dramatic rise in temperature has made vast areas completely uninhabitable. Temperatures reach 50 to 60 degrees at the equator, and even in the mid-latitudes, the air in the shade heats up to more than 40 degrees. Nature seems to have forgotten what storm clouds look like, what rain is, and the rivers and lakes are running dry. Fierce tornadoes of drought are mixing the sky with the ground, devastating the remnants of parched soil. Burnt out, parched forests, even the Amazon jungle, are destroyed by fires. Thousands of plants are on the brink of extinction. Most of the animal population appears to be dead. Creatures unknown to science are being found, and mutations are on the increase. Stressed animals have altered behavior. The reproductive instinct of beasts has atrophied. Third, living conditions have become intolerable, with people migrating to harsher countries. Europeans are moving to Greenland, Iceland, and northern Scandinavia. Asian countries, including India and China, have ceded territories in the vastness of Russian Siberia. Kamchatka became a refuge for the Japanese. Latin America gained the right to settle in Canada, and Australians settled in Alaska. But the African continent was struck by a real tragedy. An epidemic of a deadly virus, a form of plague, claimed nearly 200 million lives in a few years. At the initiative of the SNO, the continent has been placed under absolute quarantine, a kind of strict prison regime. Africa became completely cut off from the rest of the civilized world. However, the Black Continent's drinking water was provided by the arrival of giant icebergs from Antarctica. Thousands of containers of food supplies are shipped to Africa. Even to catch fish, Africans are banned from neutral waters. River deltas are being disinfected with special products because of the infestation. The world is realizing that unless an effective vaccine is found against this deadly disease, the African continent is doomed. It is feared that the deadly virus could then spread to other continents. Fourth, the political economic picture of the world has changed dramatically. A new international structure has been set in motion to replace the archaic SNO. Domestic comfort was reduced, man's relationship with nature became closer, and domestic life became more similar to the medieval era. Money, gold, precious stones, and other valuables ceased to be the attributes of exchange. Shares in companies became worthless. Millionaires are forced to give up their accumulated wealth in the name of the common good, and the unwritten principle of universal equality, once proclaimed in Marxist theories, seems to have taken hold. In the ghost towns that have been abandoned to their fate, the marooned are the masters. Business is at the disposal of the state. Private profit-making structures are banned. Climate change has taken a heavy toll on agriculture, and the production of basic foodstuffs has died out. Food rations are provided mainly by biotechnology and the chemical industry. The fishing industry is a little more optimistic, as the warming climate has temporarily boosted the population of marine life in the planet's waters. Forests are drying up, and wood is being rushed into the construction of new housing. Information technology and communication tools have been taken into public ownership. Television, daily newspapers, radio, and the internet only publish information that has been censored by the government. International tourism is stifled. Book trade, film industry, cultural life are dead. Concerts, art festivals, exhibitions, and sports competitions are no longer held. The mentality of the people has changed beyond recognition in the face of the catastrophe. The self-preservation instinct of the population pours out its creative energies in preparation for worse times to come. The oil and gas industry has been transferred to international ownership. Industry is teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Technical, financial, economic, and human resources are thrown at the survival of humanity. The only change that is acknowledged as positive is the coming together of the world's major religious denominations in the face of a global cataclysm. Fifth, but a sphere of activity has evolved, with a particular focus on the conquest of outer space. With temperatures on Mars rising by 20 degrees, conditions have become more friendly to man. It was said that the Red Planet was like Noah's Ark, which would save life on Earth. With the invention of ion, rocket engines, spacecraft can reach speeds of up to 100 kilometers per second. The construction of the stratospheric elevator, a global aeronautical marvel, is complete. Invaluable resources are devoted to the human settlement project on Mars, the establishment of the Martian city. This is an enclosed, covered space with an artificial atmosphere, a megacity that will be home to as many as 5 million people. A total of 5 million Earthlings selected in a prescribed order. The building blocks for Martian construction are supplied by spacecraft, assembly is carried out by robots, and supply and process control is organized from terminals flying in Mars orbit. It is estimated that in a few years' time, humans will be living millions of kilometers away from their home planet Earth. After the TV show, Gerald calls his son to congratulate him on his birthday, then asks how his astronautics college education is going. After thanking his father for his congratulations, he adds, Arnold says he has a surprise for his dad. 3. Gerald and his daughter arrive at the White House for a meeting between the President of the United States and the families of the astronauts who disappeared on the space expedition. A group of relatives is present. The mood of the gathering is mournful. The President, it turns out, a sad smile on his face, undisguised grief. The President is talking about reforms on the planet, about the creation of an international parliament. The Eurodollar will cease to circulate and trade will take the form of barter in subsistence proportional exchange. The office of President of the United States will no longer exist after Congress has voted in favor of a provisional constitution. The President will therefore have to say goodbye to the White House. America will be placed under an international authority with headquarters in Greenland. Following the tragic end of the Unicum expedition to Jupiter's moon Europa, the President expresses his condolences to the families of the missing astronauts. However, NASA reports cast doubt on the existence of a celestial body of uncertain origin, which the world's astronomers have so far been unable to detect. The President's summing up comes as a pleasant surprise to those present. A space expedition is being urgently dispatched to search for Unicum. The news is greeted with hope. The President gives a surprise introduction to the crew of the Good News Search spacecraft. One by one, a group of a dozen astronauts enter the room. Among them is Arnold. Gerald is shocked. His father was not informed of his son's participation in the selection contest and would have categorically forbidden him to take part in a space expedition, especially after his wife disappeared near the planet Jupiter. The President underlines the determination of the youngest astronaut in the country's history, 18-year-old Arnold Grossner, scion of a dynasty of space conquerors. Although his mother did not return from orbit, the dashing boy gave the older candidates a high five in the exercise. The President announces that the states are giving a housing development in Alaska for Christmas to the families of the missing. Feeling wronged, Arnold apologizes to his father. After exchanging a few words, the astronaut team leaves. Gerald is heartbroken. His son's actions simply astonished him. While looking for his daughter, Gerald finds Erica playing with a 7-year-old boy called Edwin. The boy's mother is surprised when she arrives. Her little boy has never played with girls. Gerald meets Tatiana Vivolo, the wife of the commander of the Unicum spacecraft. Gerald feels an obvious affection for the woman. 4. Gerald settles in Alaska. By a pleasant coincidence, Miss Vivolo and her baby son move in across the street from his house. Gerald and Tatiana become closer friends and celebrate Christmas together. Gerald kisses Tatiana for the first time. The woman admits that the feeling of happiness is returning to her heart, but an unexpected phone call from Gerald's colleague urges him to turn on the news channel immediately. The satellite is showing footage from Antarctica. An incredible thing has just happened. An extremely powerful earthquake has just struck the Antarctic continent. The quake caused cracks in the cold continent's 3-kilometer-thick ice sheet. This may be a unique opportunity to study the structure of the cold continent and its geophysical history over hundreds of millions of years. Shortly after the news broadcast, the chef receives a call. Even though it is Christmas night, Grossner is immediately sent to Antarctica as a reporter on the scene of disasters for the Cataclysm Chronicles. In the darkness of a northern night, Gerald and his little daughter go on a long journey. Tatiana wipes away a tear. A few hours later, a jet takes off from Anchorage Airport, taking a group of scientists and TV crews to Antarctica. Number 5. Summer at the South Pole. A day lasts half the year. The sun shines brightly all day. Since his arrival, Gerald and his technical staff have been working together to produce unique TV programs. He receives summaries from space satellites. An earthquake has caused a large part of the Antarctic ice sheet to break off. Gerald decides to look around the ice sheet and film footage for a report of worldwide interest. The helicopter flies over a detached iceberg with a gorge 100 to 200 meters across. At the bottom, an eerie abyss, 3 kilometers deep, yawns. The brave scientists, including Gerald, decide to try a helicopter descent down the crevasse. The pilot discourages them from the risky venture, but fear is overcome by the thrill of the unknown. A helicopter descends down into an icy abyss. A floodlight illuminates the incredible beauty of the ice shelves. A kilometer down, an unpredictable wind picks up, as the pilot rushes to avoid a hurricane in the gorge. The helicopter, distracted by the wind, is difficult to control. A couple of 100 meters from the top, the propeller suddenly crashes into a wall of ice and breaks off, falling down. The helicopter is precariously stuck on an ice ledge. It looks as if it is about to plunge into the abyss, along with the people on board. Gerald breaks the jammed door and jumps out, taking refuge in an ice niche. As the hurricane rages, Gerald helps his colleagues. The pilot hands over a toolbox. He might need it. However, the helicopter fails to stay on the ice ledge and slides into the gorge. The pilot manages to jump out. A bright flash from the abyss is followed by the echo of an explosion. Colleagues sigh a sigh of relief. Everyone escaped. At that moment, a strong gust of wind rips the pilot off the ice wall like a feather. The living are horrified to see a man plummeting into the dark abyss. They hear his dying scream. Gerald uses tools to carve steps in the ice. After a grueling climb to the top, the scientists cannot believe the tragedy. They return to the base. When questioned, they do not say anything coherent. They consider themselves guilty for the pilot's death. Erica greets her puzzled father. Gerald tells his daughter about the disaster. After going to bed, the hurricane blizzard is not letting up. The buildings of the research station seem about to be torn off their fortifications. Erica cannot sleep in the terrible wind. Her father reassures her it's no big deal now, but in Antarctica, the blizzard is much stronger in the winter, as much as people are woken up by strong underground shocks. The causes of the earthquake are incomprehensible. Seismologists have never recorded deep-sea activity in Antarctica before. The underground tremors are repeated, and the shaken buildings seem about to collapse. The roar of the crowd adds to the nightmare feeling. A plane is being prepared urgently, and we need to get out of the disaster zone. Gerald hesitates. Maybe he should stay here. But Erica won't let go of her dad, begs him to go with her. As luggage is transported out of the building, the jarring underground blasts continue. In a storm, poor visibility makes it difficult to navigate. Gerald and his daughter are the last to find the runway. At that moment, the continent of Antarctica is rocked by an underground explosion of supernatural power. Gerald and his daughter are thrown directly beneath the wheels of the plane. As the shockwave throws the plane upwards, a gust of wind knocks it on its side, nearly breaking the wing. A terrifying rumble pierces the ears. Has a cataclysm struck the Antarctic continent? The white ice plain seems to be changing its angle to the horizon. The ground is slipping from under its feet. As far as the eye can see, for hundreds of miles around, a surreal picture of horror emerges. A gigantic iceberg is clearly growing, literally towering. The crowd goes wild. A dozen colleagues finally get the plane back on its wheels. The twin engine crashes, accelerates, and rolling down the sloping ice plain, manages to get happily airborne. Gerald's video camera captures a unique phenomenon. The Antarctic ice sheet has been lifted by a supernatural force. Enthusiasm and fright are rewarded. The Antarctic ice sheet broke away during the first Christmas Eve underground impact, forming a high plateau with a steep, kilometer-high wall of ice at the edge of the fracture. Scientists hypothesize that a tectonic fracture of the Earth's crust underground uplifted an iceberg weighing trillions of tons. The scale of the phenomenon can only be grasped from outer space. The aircraft returns safely to base as the fuel in the tanks runs out. Gerald uses footage from the Cataclysm Chronicles, satellite information on the shape and contours of the growing glacier. What emerges is that this unique event is much bigger than previously imagined. A gigantic Antarctic ice sheet, about 2 million square kilometers in area and 5 million cubic kilometers in volume, has broken away. Antarctica is off limits to visitors. The Earth's mantle is dormant, with periodic underground tremors and life-threatening risks. Gerald is forced to temporarily abandon his Antarctic mission. Number 7. Gerald, accompanied by his daughter and Tatiana and her son, arrives at the space launch site at the new Alaska spaceport. Gerald is almost late for the TV commentator's chair. He sees Arnold only in the last moments as the astronauts say goodbye to their loved ones from afar. Preparations are underway for a launch into Jupiter's orbit. Gerald informs the audience that a manned spacecraft will be making its first use of the newly designed space elevator, the most fantastic structure in the world, incorporating colossal innovations from American and other countries' technological advances. The space elevator is 15 kilometers tall, has a footprint of 4 square kilometers, and weighs over 10 million tons. The six-legged structure is made up of prefabricated structures made of lightweight and ultra-strong carbon fiber material. The Colossus is covered with efficient solar panels so that it is self-sufficient in energy. The space elevator is protected from hurricanes by a technological ingenuity. Prosody by absorbing the destructive energy of the wind, the Colossus begins to rotate on a synthetic diamond pivot of gigantic diameter mounted on the foundation. This reduces the tilt of the structure in either direction and stabilizes the amplitude of the lateral oscillation. The space elevator principle is considered to be innovative. 6 magnetic induction accelerators, which give the spacecraft a tremendous acceleration, propel the spacecraft along a 15-kilometer shaft of the elevator, propelling it to speeds of almost 2,000 meters per second. The spacecraft, thrown straight into the stratosphere, easily reaches cosmic velocity by ionization turbines. Magnetic accelerators are parachuted to Earth. The space elevator has many advantages: significant fuel savings, the ability to launch several spacecraft per day, etc. It's an exciting start. The numbers 60, 59, 58 glow on the giant board. People witnessing the miracle of the space elevator for the first time up close and personal fall silent at the number 0. The Good News spacecraft begins its soundless ascent, accelerating fantastically. All you hear is the whoosh of air. With her head held high, Erica gasps as the parachute domes unfurl high in the sky. The magnetic accelerators are descending, and the spacecraft is safely in space. Gerald announces the plans for the space expedition to a TV audience. After visiting the planet Mars, Good News will head towards the giant Jupiter. Following in the footsteps of the missing spacecraft at 85 kilometers per sec, it will reach Jupiter's satellite Europa, where Unicum had its last contact with Earth 2.5 months later. At the end of the broadcast, Gerald returns to his folks, lost in thought. "Dad, what's wrong with you? Are you upset about something?" "I am praying, my daughter, that God will not forget to send my son home." Hearing these words, Tatiana wipes away a tear. Edwin, mesmerized by the memorable sight, does not let go of the binoculars. 8. Spend the evening together. Tatiana surprises them with her culinary skills. After the children fall asleep, Gerald reveals to his girlfriend the problems of his life with Evelina. It was not easy. The astronaut wife forgot to take care of her relatives. Family losses foreshadowed a cosmic loss. In Gerald's imagination, a rather cold goodbye scene from 2 years ago comes to mind. Tatiana shows family photographs. Family life is not so easy for many astronauts, she says. Tatiana was patient, even though her husband Iwan Vavilo was interested in space expeditions, and there was simply no time for his wife and son. Leaving the children asleep, the two go out for a romantic night. In northern Alaska, even in winter, there is no snow and the temperature is plus. On a pale night, the lovers feel close to each other. They kiss gently. Suddenly, Erica pops out from under her nightgown, a look of fright on her face. "Daddy, I thought you had gone away, leaving me alone. I woke up dreaming of Mummy. She says that from where she is now, our Earth looks tiny, like a grain of sand." Meanwhile, in Antarctica, the calving glacier is not standing still. It is sliding down an inclined plane at a speed of 0.1 kilometers per hour under gravity. But what could happen to the world next? The Cataclysm Chronicles send Gerald back to a continent full of danger. Erica is left at home in Tatiana's care. Gerald decides to submit some interesting footage for television. A snowmobile glides towards the junction of the ice shelf. A few miles away, the howl of a giant crushing obstacles in its path is clearly audible. As they approach the edge of the crevasse, their ears are deafened by a roar echoing from the abyss. The sight shocks the imagination. An iceberg, hundreds of times more massive than Mount Everest itself, Inch by inch, the ice mass gnaws at the road, offering no resistance, breaking, simply grinding the rock ridges into flour. Scientists are solving a riddle. How dangerous is the slide of the Antarctic ice sheet towards the ocean? Suddenly, a mass of thousands of tons of ice suddenly breaks loose and crashes down, rumbling. Risking a sledge ride to the iceberg's ledge, Gerald and a TV cameraman almost plunge into the abyss. The sledge jumps over the gap. The monster's researchers calculate that the creep is accelerating and events could soon take an unspeakable turn. 9. The spacecraft is approaching the orbit of Mars. Scanning the sky with his telescope, Arnold sees something unusual that he had expected in his heart of hearts, an asteroid-like object in motion. He initiates his colleague Sarah, an astrophysicist, into the mystery. Looking intently, "Damn, I've never seen that before. Something moving across the sky and we haven't noticed it yet. Just look. The radars are silent, the screens show only Deimos and Phobos. Mystic." Arnold still believes that the Unicum spacecraft's message about a celestial body of unknown origin is the purest truth, and that if he didn't believe it existed, he wouldn't have tracked the asteroid by its shadow. When Unicum attempted to land on the mysterious body, its connection to Earth was immediately lost. Is this the only reason why the astronaut crew was presumed dead? Maybe Mum is not missing, maybe she is alive and well, say captured by aliens? Arnold doesn't believe in fairy tales, but in his mother's case, he hopes for a miracle. Arnold and Sarah share their concerns with the commander of the spaceship. However, the commander just laughs at the evidence of the discovery. When Arnold protests, the commander takes them both outside. The unidentified object defies the laws of physics. It does not reflect sunlight, it cannot be detected by technical means, it is impossible to analyze its spectrum, it is impossible to measure its parameters, the asteroid's structure is unknown, and it is not possible to calculate the asteroid's trajectory, its distance, or its velocity of motion. The only practical method is to observe the asteroid's motion visually. NASA decides to postpone Good News' journey to Jupiter for a while. Is the mysterious celestial body an asteroid in the solar system? Meanwhile, the black body's shadow is clearly increasing in the sky, which means the asteroid is getting closer. Astrophysicist Sarah sends an alarm to NASA. In about a week's time, the mysterious creature will reach the red planet. The celestial body is a few hundred kilometers across, and, although it is not the size of Ceres, the largest asteroid in the solar system, it is still as big as Pallade, Vesta, and Hygeia. The world is panicking. What if an asteroid hits Mars? Is a catastrophic outcome imminent? Fears are beginning to arise about the future of humanity's Noah's Ark. After all, a collision would radically change the Earth's situation and would literally kill the Martian project. Good News reports the asteroid will approach Mars in about 12 days. The commander of the spaceship is deeply offended that important information has been transmitted to Earth without his agreement. He punishes Arnold and Sarah by forbidding astronomical observations without their express permission. We are 24 hours away from the intrusion of an unknown celestial body into the orbit of Mars. The control center decides not to risk the spacecraft, and Good News is forbidden to approach the unidentified body within 500 kilometers. Finally, the assumption that Unicum was killed by an asteroid named Black Apocalypse is considered. Millions of hearts are dying on Earth. Is a Martian collapse imminent? The Black Apocalypse that once engulfed Unicum is now trying to ram the planet on which humanity's hopes are pinned. Righteous people have emerged who claim that this is God's revenge on a sin-ridden Earth. Black Apocalypse in Mars orbit. Good News broadcasts a report back to Earth while maintaining a fixed distance from the asteroid. A horror-stricken crew follows the movement of the body. Through the telescope, they can see the outline. The asteroid looks like a hemisphere that has been drastically upended. Sarah, looks like the Black Apocalypse is about to hit Phobos. Apparently, the Black Apocalypse is on a trajectory directly towards Mars Phobos. The commander of the spacecraft does not trust the scientific knowledge of young people. The crew is breathless when the oncoming Phobos hits the Black Apocalypse and melts like a snowball. The mysterious asteroid is completely unresponsive to the impact, while Phobos turns into billions of tiny particles. Will Mars be the next victim of the Black Apocalypse? The hours tick by in suspense. Fortunately, the Black Apocalypse reverses its trajectory, circling Mars a couple of thousand miles away. The commander of the spacecraft finds a good opportunity to mock the young astronauts. Humanity breathes a huge sigh of relief. A tricky question for scientists. What kind of material is this celestial body made of if it is not affected by Mars' gravity? Good news has been following the Black Apocalypse relentlessly. Suddenly, astronauts are brought back to their feet by astrophysicist Sarah. After calculating the asteroid's trajectory, which has been altered by the gravitational pull of Mars, she delivers her verdict. In 90 days, the Black Apocalypse threatens to hit our planet. This terrible hypothesis is causing both NASA and the country's leadership to react with dismay. A dilettantish calculation, by eye, has nothing to do with the scientific method. The commander of the spacecraft is furious and threatens the young people with severe sanctions for disobedience and disorientation. Arnold manages to contact his father without his commander's knowledge and transmits the calculations made on the spaceship. Gerald sends the data to a scientist he knows and receives a reply confirming a sinister hypothesis. But under pressure from the state censor, Gerald makes a softer assumption on television. There is only a hypothetical possibility of a black apocalypse approaching the Earth. Meanwhile, in Antarctica, the ice monster is already moving at 50 kilometers per day, and the rate of sliding is increasing by the hour. But the icebergs being pushed into the ocean are of relatively small caliber. Scientists are worried. As the acceleration continues, we could face a disaster. If a glacier mass of millions of cubic kilometers were to crash into the ocean at, say, 80 kilometers per hour, the planet would suffer an unprecedented catastrophe, as tsunamis of 100 to 200 meters in height would rip through the world's oceans one after the other, wiping out the northern coasts that are essential for human survival. The global water level would rise by 5 to 6 meters, catastrophically inundating millions of square kilometers of land. The world is becoming darker and darker. Billions of people feel condemned. Society is in despair. Gerald tries to be optimistic and hopeful. Meanwhile, Tatiana is genuinely afraid of the end of the world. 11. The Black Apocalypse celestial body is inexorably hurtling towards Earth. With 10 days to go before a possible tragic collision, the information is allowed to be broadcast officially. There is apathy in the Cataclysm Chronicles studio. Gerald delivers a drastic report. His voice is shaking. The words seem about to sink in. Scientists have acknowledged that an unidentifiable celestial body is on a trajectory aimed directly at us, our planet Earth. Calculations show that the so-called Black Apocalypse will hit the Arctic Ocean somewhere near the North Pole exactly 10 days from now, on Sunday afternoon, GMT. The celestial body is moving at around 31 kilometers per sec. Fortunately, our planet is not moving in opposite directions, but in the same direction at 29 kilometers per sec. But the difference in velocity is still almost 2 kilometers per sec. The size of the body that will attack Earth is enormous. The asteroid looks like a sphere that has been blown up, with a diameter of 450 kilometers and an altitude of 180 kilometers. The structure and origin of this cosmic object are beyond the ability of science to investigate by any method. The hypothesis is that the asteroid may be composed of matter of extremely heavy atomic weight, with a mass equal to that of our planet. This would mean that the Earth's crust would split on impact, shattering the mantle with a fatal force tens of times the Richter scale. The planet's surface will be covered in volcanoes of molten magma. Boiling ocean water will flood the continents. Oxygen in the atmosphere will burn up. Air temperatures will rise by 100 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and no life will have a chance to survive. The devastated Earth will deviate from its orbit, changing the angle and period of its rotation axis, the length of the day and the length of its revolution around the sun. No counterattack will help our planet. The 27 kilometers diameter Phobos satellite of Mars, blown to smithereens, is clear evidence that modern weapons will not be able to defeat the Black Apocalypse. It is hard to believe the brutal outcome. In 10 days' time, will the blue planet become a living hell for humans? So let us pray to God. He is the only one who gave life to our planet and the only one who can save it. Behind the scenes, Tatiana is swallowing, racked by the pain of impending loss. The children, Erica and Edvinus, hug each other in tears. While SNO feared a global panic, the world suddenly calmed down. As if awakened after centuries of blindness, people miraculously converted to God in a matter of days. Religious communities of all stripes came together as citizens of the world counted down the final days before the planet's demise. People who had lost hope of being saved felt painfully how precious their native Earth is, how priceless life is, and how the opportunity for nations to foster peace and harmony had been undeservedly underestimated. Surprisingly, in the face of cataclysm, spontaneous human piety has warded off the fear of hopelessness. Nations and peoples, communities, tribes and families have felt ready to face with honor the fatal end of the world, if that is God's will. Arnold is probably the only one on board the spaceship who keeps his composure and his sanity. His colleague Sarah is equally optimistic. Both keep their eyes on the black apocalypse, gazing at the strangely regular surface of the black hemisphere, at the unprecedented hardness of the asteroid's material. Meanwhile, the commander of Good News, struggling to cope with the impending death of his family, goes mad and isolates himself. During the interview session, Arnold consoles his father, trying to convince him of something that contradicts astronomers' calculations. The black apocalypse is not as antagonistic as many people think. After all, the asteroid has already made a brilliant maneuver to pass by Mars, so maybe it will spare our Earth. Sarah answers the phone and adds that Arnold's tale has a basis, and there is certainly some optimism. "Dad, I beg you, don't let go of my hand. Believe me, we will go fishing again." "Didn't you mention that Alaska is full of fish?" Earth's apocalyptic collision with an asteroid is 1 hour away. Humanity is ready for the apocalypse. Gerald, Tatiana, and their children see an asteroid approaching. They are huddled together, mute, eyes closed, inwardly trembling. Gerald looks gratefully at Tatiana, clutching a packet of Your Dream Forever, a special pill that puts a person to sleep for eternity. After drinking a portion, the family members will no longer feel any fear, no longer experience any physical pain. 12. The black apocalypse is only 6,000 kilometers from Earth. An asteroid is approaching at a terrifying speed of 2 kilometers per sec. Europeans are terrified as they see a dark object looming larger and larger in the firmament, heading for Earth. And now the asteroid is about to enter Earth's atmosphere. The crew of the spacecraft realize that the asteroid is about to make a tragic impact in the Arctic Ocean. With planet Earth 2000, 1900, 1800, an asteroid passes over Scandinavia, approaching the North Pole. But something incredible happens. As if a braking mechanism has kicked in, the asteroid slows down noticeably, with a 50 meters per sec decrease in velocity every 100 kilometers. A hypothesis is raised. Could the asteroid be made of magnetized material? And according to the laws of physics, when magnetic fields of equal polarization are subject to rebound forces, the asteroid should avoid contact with the North Pole. There is hope that the asteroid will not hit planet Earth. And now, at 1.5 kilometers per sec, an asteroid is about to plow into the Arctic Ocean. But, as if by a flip of a switch, the asteroid's flight path slips 500 kilometers into a 500-kilometer orbit around the Earth. Its trajectory follows a meridian that crosses Alaska. A doomed humanity cannot believe that death seemed so inevitable, that the end of the world had already been accepted. Is this a God-sent salvation, or just a temporary maneuver of the heavenly body? An unexplained phenomenon, the Earth's gravitational pull does not seem to affect the black apocalypse. The asteroid orbits the Earth at 1.5 kilometers per sec. A giant shadow, 500 times the diameter of the moon's disk, obscures the sun, plunging the area into the darkness of night for half an hour. The inhabitants of Earth are happy to wave at the asteroid like a spacecraft of peaceful aliens. Arnold happily hugs his crew. The euphoric crew find it hard to believe in the apparent miracle. Space services on Earth are urgently changing the orbits of some artificial satellites, clearing the way for the black apocalypse. Gerald can't believe the happy ending. Gerald's face brightens when Tatiana hides the lethal poison rations. After passing over Alaska, the asteroid continues to glide towards the equatorial meridian. Due to the Earth's rotation on its axis, The asteroid is estimated to pass over the Pacific Ocean, pass near Hawaii, and then follow the east coast of Australia and the west coast of New Zealand. The view is fantastic. As the shadow covers the ocean, a storm blows in, and the air suddenly cools to freezing temperatures. Absolute darkness lasts for half an hour, then dawn breaks. The eclipse is accompanied by fabulous effects in the firmament. The northern lights are visible in the evening, and the spectrum of refracted sunlight in the morning. The four of them walk into a house in the shadow of an asteroid. We seem to have got off lightly. I feel like I've been born again. Gerald gets a call from the TV. Unfortunately, there is not only good news, but also worse news. Gerald, come here at once. The mood in the Cataclysm Chronicles is uplifting, but the information that comes in is not. The edge of a moving megal iceberg is estimated to have just crashed into the Indian Ocean. Fortunately, the geometry of the ice is flat, so it did not cause a powerful tsunami. But in a few hours, the giant's plunge at 70 kilometers per hour will be catastrophic. The runaway planet, having unexpectedly escaped a fatal asteroid attack, has forgotten this vital problem. Gerald receives a message in the telestudio. For unknown reasons, the orbital path of the Black Apocalypse is decreasing, dropping from 500 kilometers to 350 kilometers at the equator. Will the Earth's gravity attract the mysterious giant? Are the cheers for an avoided cataclysm premature? 13. Once in Earth orbit, good news follows the asteroid. Arnold watches through a telescope as the asteroid picks up satellites that have come of age like trash. Arnold tells Sarah about the unknown celestial body as an intelligent creature that has come to our planet on a mission. Sarah tries to challenge Arnold's idea that no supernatural intelligence capable of controlling the laws of the universe has manifested itself in the history of mankind, at least not yet, and that there is no force beyond the grave that can determine the fate of life on this planet. But Arnold is confident that this asteroid may be the messenger of a supernatural force, bringing a new message of enlightenment to humanity. The Black Apocalypse hovers at the Earth's equatorial meridian over the Hawaiian archipelago, ravaged by terrible heat. In the southern hemisphere, the asteroid is passing close to Australia, orbiting at a low altitude of just 150 kilometers. The eclipse lasts for almost an hour, and the fierce winds turn it into a hurricane. Millions of lightning bolts sparkle, even though there is not a cloud in the sky. The asteroid's orbit is clearly descending as it approaches Antarctica, and its velocity is slowing. Sailors from fishing boats at the epicenter of the events capture unique images. And here's an asteroid headed straight for the separated Antarctic ice shelf. The speed of the celestial body drops to 1,000 kilometers per hour, and the trajectory turns downwards. The asteroid appears to be attracted by the magnetic force of the South Pole. In an incredible act, the Black Apocalypse rips through the air with a deafening roar and crashes full weight into the detached edge of an ice monster, catastrophically diving into the ocean. Gigantic tusks collapse into the body of the ice mass. The sight is stunning. An asteroid, its pointed fangs having pushed trillions of tons of Antarctic ice, skates another few hundred kilometers across the bald plateau. The space powerhouse, slamming into the ice sheet with thunderous force, performs a miraculous maneuver as if by supernatural order, flipping over in a matter of minutes. An asteroid hitting a glacier on the back is a natural phenomenon of unimaginable effect. The ice chunks of enormous tonnage come crashing down, bombarding everything in their path, even the buildings of scientists' headquarters. The asteroid flips over on its back, and after piling the Antarctic ice shell of colossal proportions on its belly, the back bounces off the south magnetic pole. The asteroid soon breaks away from the Earth's surface. The stunning, fantastic process is televised from the spacecraft for the whole world to see. The shadow cast by the Black Apocalypse, along with the captured glacier, covers half of Europe, making the solar eclipse even more unique. 24 hours later, the asteroid is already in a 300-kilometer orbit. The Black Apocalypse asteroid, which threatened to end the world, is paradoxically described as a savior. A glacier sliding into the ocean would have ended in catastrophe. The TV studio sends Gerald again to Antarctica, the site of a physical contact with an asteroid, where exciting scientific findings are expected. physicists investigate the dust left behind by the asteroid, confirming the hypothesis that the matter is not of solar system origin. Science will also benefit from the discovery of millions of square kilometers of land, as Antarctica loses almost a quarter of its ice sheet. The asteroid's list of good deeds grows longer. Hundreds of artificial Earth satellites are found on the glacier, which crashed when the asteroid flipped over on its back. This is space junk that humanity should have collected long ago. Wandering away from the camp on a snowmobile, Gerald almost trips on a frozen, ice skin-like container. He is outraged by the objects scattered at the edge of the world. He snowmobiles a dozen metal boxes to the camp, leaving them next to a dump. The next day, Gerald's ears are alerted to an unusual commotion in the camp. His colleagues have discovered an interesting find. When Gerald goes to take a look, he nearly falls over. As the walls of the box he brought with him thaw in the sun, the words Unicum are read out. Has he found the black box of the Unicum spacecraft? A NASA spokesman is summoned and describes the find as priceless. 1 month later, mail is delivered to a settlement in Alaska for the astronauts' relatives. When Gerald opens the letter, he finds a handwritten letter from his wife, Evelina. His heart pounds in his chest. He kneels down in his chair to read it. He picks up the letter again and reads it more carefully. It's impossible for us to come back. The electronics are out of order. We are trying to make the right decision. If we manage to get the ignition on, we will take the risk to start. The consequences are unknown. We will be tested. The crew fears that if the spacecraft's computers cannot be repaired when we get away from the space body, we will be flying through space only on a straight trajectory, or rather, wherever our eyes lead us. According to the calculations, our spacecraft will move away from our home planet somewhere in the orbit of Neptune, and then our bodies might even end up outside the solar system. Gerald sighs heavily and continues reading. These may be my last words. Forgive me, Gerald, but I must confess, I fell in love with someone else, and I hid it for 2 years, so I beg you to forgive me. Do not curse me forever. Do not say anything to the children. Get your life and your children's lives in order. In the evening, Tatiana comes in wearing a dress. She tells Gerald about Iwan's strange letter saying that there is practically no chance of returning to Earth. He claims that the spaceship has landed on an asteroid made of metal harder than diamond. In his view, this celestial body is definitely not of solar system origin. The astronauts have almost a year's supply of food, but this will not save them. Iwan admits that he has found his happiness among the space shuttle team and wishes Tatiana to find a man worthy of her. After learning about Ivana and Evelina, Gerald decides to keep his wife's confession quiet. Both realize their spouses have said goodbye for good. Number 15. After 1 year, early morning, Gerald and Tatiana in bed. Waking up, something cold. I'll turn on the heater. Tatiana, go to the children, see if they are warmly dressed. Gerald opens the curtain. His eyes light up. Darling, look who's here. Not taking the hint, Tatiana gets out of bed. She is pregnant, her belly is big. Snow! It's winter! Let's wake up the children. It's a holiday in Alaska today. Outside, the family enjoys snow that hasn't fallen for several years. Erica and Edvinas have already grown a lot. The village is bustling with snowballs. Suddenly, the sky darkens as Earth's second satellite, once dubbed the Black Apocalypse, passes overhead. But now it's called Unicum, in memory of the spacecraft that discovered the asteroid. In the years since an asteroid began to circle the Earth at an altitude of 800 to 1,000 kilometers, carrying trillions of tons of Antarctic ice, the world's climate has begun to change for the better. The sun's heat has subsided, people are returning to their homelands, green vegetation is coming back to life, and animals are having babies. An asteroid is forming a protective layer in the Earth's atmosphere, shielding the planet from direct sunlight. Repeated spectacular solar eclipses provide people with refreshing coolness and spectacular sights. When observed with instruments, the 3-kilometer-thick glacier looks like a thin film against the blue sky. Scientists are optimistic that the ice will not melt in the next millennium. An SUV pulls into the yard. Arnold has arrived with Sarah. They greet each other warmly. The main question that interests the scientific world is this: Who sent this celestial body, the savior of planet Earth? And from where? If the asteroid came from another star system, what prophet could have foreseen thousands of years ago the increase in the sun's heat and the consequent destruction of life on our planet? Who was able to determine with such precision the speed, trajectory, and other miraculous wonders of this messenger that the great minds of the world are not able to iron out? No theoretical deductions, no valid scientific hypotheses to explain this phenomenon have been made to date. Humanity, thanks to the will of the Most High, has already become accustomed to the presence of a second Earth satellite in the firmament. And in my opinion, God has long since given a sign to mankind: solar eclipses. For some reason, nobody wants to see the obvious truth. After this astronomical miracle, are there still naive people who think that the moon, 400 times smaller in diameter than the sun, just happened to be 400 times closer to the Earth, just perfectly covering the sun's disk during an eclipse? And I was a hardcore atheist from an early age. I was a hardcore atheist, and I believed in the existence of God when I saw with my own eyes the supernatural feat of an asteroid. Daddy, do you remember what I saw in my dream a year ago? After all, God sent this unicum after hearing Mommy's prayer, didn't he? Father and Arnold walk out the door. Tatiana, who has stayed at home, finds common ground with Sarah, the astronaut. Erica and Edvin are kneeling in the yard with the neighbor's children. Gerald, bringing his son a fisherman's case. What have you got here? Arnold, with a sneer. Dad, have you forgotten that I invited you to go fishing from the spaceship? Well, remember that horrible moment when the Earth was a couple of hours away from destruction? Gerald snorts a little, and then they both giggle infectiously. The end. Copyright 2024 by Arnoldus Rasma. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the publisher, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law.